My family had owned this ranch for generations. It covered hundreds of acres of open Texas countryside. I had always known exactly where my property boundaries were. Then one morning, I discovered someone had crossed a line. I started every morning by checking the fences. Those fences marked the boundaries of my land. Most days, everything looked exactly the way it should. But that morning, I noticed fresh tire tracks beyond the gate. The tracks were definitely new. They continued across a section of land I rarely visited. I followed them toward the eastern boundary of the ranch. What I found there made my stomach drop. Someone had installed a completely new fence. It wasn't on my original property boundary. The fence had been moved deep into my ranch. Hundreds of acres appeared to have been claimed overnight. I pulled out my original property survey. The legal boundary was nowhere near this new fence. The difference was a few feet or even a few yards. Someone had moved the line across hundreds of acres. Then the HOA president arrived at my ranch. She acted like the new fence was completely normal. I asked her why the HOA was building on my property. Her answer was the last thing I expected. She claimed the land had been included in the HOA's development plan. I told her my ranch wasn't part of their neighborhood. She insisted the association had records proving otherwise. I asked her to show me those records immediately. She handed me a copy of an HOA property map. The map showed a large section of my ranch inside their boundary, but the map didn't match my recorded property survey. That was when I knew this wasn't a simple misunderstanding. I compared both maps line by line. The HOA map had a completely different boundary line. My recorded survey clearly showed the ranch belonged to me. I decided the next step was checking the county records. The county records told a very different story. My deed showed the entire ranch as one private parcel. There was no HOA ownership recorded over those acres, and there was no transfer document giving them my land. The county official confirmed the recorded boundary. The documents showed my ranch remained privately owned. The HOA's map did not change the recorded property line. Now I had official records to prove it. I returned to the ranch with certified copies of the records. I showed the HOA president exactly where the legal boundary stood. She refused to acknowledge that her map was wrong. Instead, she threatened to involve law enforcement. A police officer arrived at the property later that afternoon. The HOA president immediately claimed I was interfering with HOA property. I calmly handed the officer my deed and survey. Then I asked him to compare them with the HOA documents. The officer studied the documents carefully. He walked to the fence and compared the physical location with the survey. The evidence pointed clearly toward my recorded boundary. The HOA's claim was becoming difficult to defend. The officer told everyone that the property documents mattered. He explained that an HOA map alone didn't establish ownership. Character 2 became visibly frustrated. Then she made an even bigger mistake. She insisted the HOA had authority over the entire development area. I reminded her that my ranch existed outside the HOA boundary. The officer asked her for proof of the alleged transfer. She couldn't produce a recorded document. A county sheriff was eventually called to review the dispute. He listened to both sides before examining the documents. He walked the property boundary with the survey in hand. Then he asked the HOA president one simple question. The sheriff asked where the recorded transfer of my land was. The HOA president had no document to show him. The sheriff then pointed directly toward my original boundary markers. The new fence was clearly sitting in the wrong place. The disputed fence was finally taken down. My original boundary markers were restored across the ranch. The HOA had no legal document transferring those acres to them. What they called their land was still my private ranch. The HOA never owned those 800 acres in the first place. They had simply tried to treat my ranch like it belonged to them. But my deed, survey, and county records told the real story. And when the dust settled, every acre of my ranch was still mine.